So in this episode, we're getting back to basics, and I'm talking about layer nodes. I'm going to give you 4 real-world examples of when and why you would use layer nodes instead of parallels and serials in your node tree. This episode is aimed at beginners, but as usual, there's tips and tricks in there for more intermediate users. So first of all, let's have a look at what a layer mixer actually is, and then I'll give you these real-world scenarios. So I've got 4 shots here that I'm going to use for my 4 examples, but here I've just got this grey chart feeding into a parallel mixer. So this is a regular parallel mixer. I've got at the top here a red circle power window that I've just tinted red. I've got a green one and I've got a blue one. And you can see that because this is a parallel mixer, they're all blended equally together. So that's what a parallel does. Now to make a layer mixer instead, what I can do is actually morph this into a layer mixer. So down here you can just swap it, or I could create it from scratch, but I'm just going to do this for speed. So when I switch to layer mixer, you'll see that the layers have priority. So how it works is the bottom layer has priority over the next layer, over the next layer. And you can have as many of these as you want. You might have 10, 12, 13 layers. What's actually happening is it's not the node itself. I can put that up there. That doesn't change the priority. It's actually the inputs going into this mixer. So if I change this leg, and I'm going to bring that down, I'm going to input it into the bottom here, which is actually the top priority. It's the kind of opposite way around of what you think. Let's stick that one into there. You see now that the red has priority over green, over blue. So I can change the order of priority really easily. So now that we know what a layer mixer is doing, how does that work in real world examples? Let's take this first shot here. I've already graded this, so it's got color space transform for my color management. I've got tons of episodes on that. I'll put links to those in the description and up here and all the usual stuff. But I've already done a look on this as well. So just to show you what this looked like in Rec 709. There it is, color managed, of course. And the look for this was a jewelry commercial, is they wanted quite a desaturated look, which is going to help pop the colors on the jewels themselves. So I've not done the jewelry part yet. So what we're going to do now is to make this pop, we need to do something like a key or a curve or something like that. So I'm going to go to my keyer. I'm going to select a 3D key in this instance, and I'm just going to select the area. Now I went too far then, so I'm just going to use my negative tool here, and let's just deselect these areas here. You can take a bit more time over it than that. This is just for this example, but let me get rid of the lines on the screen. And all I need to do now is go to saturation. Let's use our HDR saturation, and I'm going to just boost that up so we get that nice popping on that blue gemstone. Now the issue I've got is I'm already feeding a desaturated look into this node, so it's not giving us the very best that we could get out of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable that one. I'm going to click on here, and instead of a serial, I'm going to use a layer. So I'm going to use Option L to create a layer node. Now what happens, if you remember, the layers have priority. So this node now has priority over this one. And this node here, if I just deselect that, contains the desaturated look. So the look is pretty strong up to there, and then it's desaturated, but this one has priority over it now. So we're getting a more rich blue in that stone. So what I want to do is use this for my key. So let's do the same 3D key. Let's apply that to the stone like so, and you can see that happening already. And if I now go to my HDR saturation and do the same thing, we get a much more prominent blue because it's being fed a stronger signal. It's being fed its signal from here, but it has priority over this layer, so it's not blended. So that is that one. And if I deselect that one, I show you the other one, you can see it's not as rich. So that is a great use of the layer node. Let's have a look at another example. So moving on to this shot here, you've seen me use this on YouTube before. It's a commercial that I graded many years ago now. But let's imagine that the picture in the window here needs to be blurred out for privacy reasons. So I've already done that here. Here's our look, by the way. So just to show you, Rec 709, it's just a little bit contrasty look. And here I've done a power window, and I've used my blur sharpen tool to just blur out the image. And I've already tracked this, so let me show you what's going on. So you can see that's tracked. Now the issue we've got is that as we move through the track, we have a character crossing over. So she will now have, if we zoom in, and I'm going to use my middle mouse click to pull that around, but she has now got the properties of that shape and the blur and a little bit of darkening there as well. So we don't want that. We want her to be obviously in the foreground of this. So we're going to use layer mixers to our advantage here. So what I'm going to do is click on here. I'm going to press Option L again to create another layer node. And now we don't see the blur of that box. The reason being is this has priority over this node here because we're in a layer mixer, not a parallel. Right, so all I need to do now, let's just put that back to best fit, is take this character here and key her out. Now what I'm going to do is use a magic mask. And let's just add some points on here. Let's see what that looks like. I'm going to keep it in faster mode for now. I could make this better, but it explains exactly what I'm doing with the nodes. Let's just track that through. And what you'll also notice now is there's a second character walking in front of that blurred box as well. So we need to deal with this character at the same time. So there's our first one done. We're seeing it in highlight mode. That's why it looks a bit strange. But let's zoom through and just check it's worked on our first character, which it has. And as we come back, the box is still blurred. And we now need to address this character. So all we've got to do is add another layer. You can have as many of these as you want. I'm going to Option L. Let's add another one. Let's do the same thing on this character now. So I'm going to go to the magic mask again. I'm going to isolate her. Let's just check that's working, which it is. Magic mask is so good. Moving forward, so we now have our two characters sitting in the foreground due to the layer mixer with a magic mask around them, revealing the node at the bottom here, which has got the blur and the box on it. So that should give us a really nice image. What I'm going to do is zoom into that so you can see what's going on. And let's just play that through. So we've got our blur. There's our first character. And there's our second character. So really good. And I could make that even better. If I put that onto better mode, you'll get a much better edge on there as well. So that's another great use of the layer nodes. Let's have a look at a third example. So Shift and Z is a really good shortcut to get that full screen. This is a music video that I did a few years back, and this is actually a nostalgic scene. So we're going back in time at this element. So we wanted quite a distinct look, and this is where I took advantage of layer nodes. So again, it's got the color space transforms for our color management. Let me show you the look that I've got going on. That's Rec 709. Here's the look so far. And I've already built my two layers, but there's nothing in there. So this is a layer mixer with two empty nodes. So what I'm going to do now is use the blending properties, the composite properties of layer nodes. So layer nodes have this ability to use blend modes. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to get rid of this node for the moment. I'm just going to disable it. At the moment, the layer mixer, the composite mode is set to normal. All right, so that gives us that priority that we're used to. What I'm going to do on this node here, I'm going to give it a kind of bleach bypass look. So what I'm going to do is desaturate this. Now there's many ways of desaturating. I could use the HDR set, I could use RGB mixer. I'm just going to use the primary tool in this instance. So let's just get primary saturation down. Let's give it a little bit of extra contrast in there maybe. Something like that. I'm going to switch this node on. Now, as you're all aware by now, since I switched this on, it has priority. So it's basically got the feed coming from here into it, overwriting this one because it has a priority. But if I change the composite mode from normal to be something else, what I'm going to do is change it to be overlay. So what the overlay blend mode does is it increases contrast in the shadows and the highlights, but not in the midtones. So that keeps our skin tones looking good. That's why this works so well. Now we can actually dial this back in as well. So if I go to here and go to our key output here, 0 is effectively, I've switched that node off. So we're back to the full color. And then 1 would be full strength. And then somewhere in between, we're mixing these two layer nodes now. And you can really experiment with these looks. If I press Command and W, this allows me to swap nodes. So I'm going to put the black and white layer where the color one was, and we get a very different look. In fact, I like that even more, to be honest. So this is a great use of layer nodes, just using the advantage of the composite modes. And you've got all these different ones in here, so you can really play around. We've got soft light, for example, that will give you another good look. So that is 3 really good uses of the layer node. These are practical examples that I use every day in my work as a professional colorist. If you're enjoying this content, before I show you the 4th one, think about subscribing, hit the like button for me so that YouTube knows you're enjoying it as well, and then hopefully YouTube sends it to many more people and everyone can benefit from this. Right, let's have a look at the 4th example of a layer node. So here we've got a commercial that I worked on, and this is a really simple and obvious example of how to use layer nodes. You can use it just to have a look at different looks. So if I've got my client sat in the room, we've got our base grade done. So we're sort of at this point here. Let me just show you what this looks like without anything. So that's just Rec 709. And then we've slowly built the look up. and we're getting to a point where we now actually want to stylize it. So what I'm doing is using layer nodes to try out different looks before we move further in our commercial development. So let's have a look at the first look. If I switch that one on, there is a look that we're going for. I've got the client here, I'm looking at it, just having a look which I like, and I'm going to compare it to this one here. So if I switch this one on, obviously it takes priority over this one, so I don't see this look. So it's always going to show you the bottom node in that layer stack. So it's a really good way of just switching on and off, going, do I like that one? Do I like that one? And it's easier than saving stills or versions. So really nice quick way of using layer nodes just to simply have a look at some different looks. So I've got hundreds of videos now on the color page, the edit page, all the other pages in DaVinci Resolve. YouTube's going to recommend you one somewhere around about here. So have a look at that one if you haven't done so already. Check out my playlist. Enjoy using your layer nodes. I hope you found that useful. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode.